I have said many times before that I am a believer in freedom, and while I intend to make public my beliefs on some of the practices and behaviours of those in support of the Pride movement, I would never resort to the use of force or coercion in order to persuade others to conform to my own worldview. And unlike many of the people who subscribe to this degenerate authoritarian movement, I think it is best to rely on the power of argument to garner support or acceptance over the power of bullying, legislation, and punishment to force conformity. But let me be clear, I can acknowledge without hesitation that homosexuality was punished brutally in the past, and that such persecution continues today in places that have not been influenced by Western thought. But one thing must be understood. Today in Ireland, in 2022, your rights have been more than validated and accepted. I would even go as far as to say that an overcorrection for the past has taken place, considering society treats you like its favourite toy, which demands constant attention and care, for fear it suffers any damage. The open, joyful and flamboyant homosexuals of Ireland have sadly become a prop for photo opportunities, or a platform to mount and claim virtue. And in many ways, it is the movement of Pride which has helped to encourage it. Pride began as a serious protest for human rights and equality, but today it is a movement that demands protections that are anti-freedom, and indeed programs that are anti-science. And unfortunately, this movement, made up of people of every walk of life, is gaining ground in its pursuit of hate speech laws, hate crime legislation, and what I can only describe as child grooming and indoctrination in schools. In my opinion, such pursuits represent a very clear effort to create a society that values self-censorship instead of free inquiry, justice based on a perceived minority status instead of actual justice, and the destruction of innocence for a so-called progressive education with sex and sexuality at its centre. And while I have every intention of defying laws which seek to control thought and speech, and indeed voice my dissent and contempt for any system of justice that is designed to treat individuals unequally, what children are taught as part of their education is a parent's responsibility. I am now going to play a video which came to my attention while watching the content produced by Ninja Knight. It appears to have been a collaboration between the Irish National Teachers Organisation and the Transgender Equality Network Ireland, and it relates to the issue of gender dysphoria in primary school.
The average age for a person to realise that their sexual orientation is lesbian, gay or bisexual, according to the LGBT Ireland study, is 12 years of age. Other studies show that the age a person realises that they are not cisgender, i.e. that they are transgender or non-binary, is much younger. If there's a member of your school community who's questioning their gender identity or who is transitioning, please get in touch with TENI, and they have resources for parents and teachers and for the young person in question. In the following video, we see what a teacher can do to help the social transition of a student in his class.
At a parent-teacher meeting, a mother told me that her child, who we called Lucy, identified as a boy and wished to be called Liam. After this, I set about preparing the class for Liam's social transition. I taught lessons investigating and challenging gender stereotypes, and using the book Introducing Teddy, explained that some people don't identify with the gender they're assigned at birth. I said, Tilly wasn't happy because everyone saw her as a boy, but she knew she was really a girl. My pupil Ray asked, so boys can change into girls? And then Julie chimed in, and girls can change into boys? Yes, I said. Sometimes, while the doctor says a baby is a boy, as that baby grows up, they feel inside that they're not a boy. While they might have a boy's name, like Tilly, they know they aren't a boy and want to change their name. The same can happen for a girl. By making those changes, the person feels happier and more like themselves. Some people who experience this might use the word transgender to describe themselves. Once the pupils understood the concept, and once Liam and his mum were happy, I helped him tell the class. Everyone, do you remember last week we read about Tilly? Everyone replied, yes. Well, we're very lucky to know a person like that, and they're even in our class. The person we've been calling Lucy is really a boy, and is now ready to tell us all. Liam told the class, "I've always felt like a boy. My new name is Liam. So when I call the ruller, I'll be calling out Liam McCarthy, and we will all call him Liam, won't we?" The whole class agreed. "Yes, teacher." Then Paul asked, "Teacher, is Liam still sitting at our table?" I laughed and replied, "Yes, nothing has changed except Liam's name." And nothing did change, except that Liam seemed much happier in school. A few weeks later, I introduced the pupils to non-binary identity, where people don't identify with being either a boy or a girl. The most important element of any lesson on gender identity is that we put the emphasis on respecting everyone, regardless of gender identity or expression.
I want to begin by saying that in my opinion, gender dysphoria is a very serious condition, and any child or indeed adult suffering from it deserves our compassion. But for me, when compassion comes in the form of disregarding biology outright and accepting delusion as fact, I draw the line. And in my opinion, the INTO and TENI are attempting to indoctrinate and groom children into thinking that a boy can become a girl by way of a declaration. And not only that, but that society must bow down to this declaration and accept it as reality. I submit, such ideas, presented as harmless and benevolent in the video just watched, serve to cultivate narcissism and mental illness. It is an exercise in social engineering, indeed an ideology or a religion, and children are the target of its teachings. At this stage, I wish to make clear the following. I will admit that some individuals with gender dysphoria, who have undergone hormone therapy and have mutilated their bodies to alleviate their suffering, are leading lives that appear to be rich and full. But make no mistake, such people are a minority within a minority. It must also be said that the internet is awash with the stories of men and women who chose to rectify their mental disorder with various life-altering surgeries, now living in regret and misery, should one care to search. But while the medical solutions being offered to treat this condition are potentially dangerous, I believe the solutions being pressed upon society, coming in the form of unreasonable submission or face being criminalized, offer a dangerous predicament also. Please imagine the following. Imagine you had a daughter suffering from anorexia. Every day she stares in the mirror, but instead of seeing a dangerously emaciated reflection, she sees a person that is too fat. Would it be right for any parent, teacher, doctor or friend to accept her delusion, knowing that such acceptance may kill her? Should those who wish to deny such madness be labelled with a phobia or indeed imprisoned? I submit, such is a dangerous game to play with the life of a vulnerable, mentally ill person, and the same can be said for those suffering from gender dysphoria. I believe that teaching a child that gender is nothing more than a fashion statement, or indeed a delusion which demands all must participate, is more dangerous than you can imagine. And in my opinion, such warped ideas may lead to a path of self or artificially induced gender dysphoria, complete with depression, irreversible hormone therapies, body mutilation, and self-harm, including suicide. But in the interest of freedom, if you as a parent hold valuable the ideas of gender and queer theory being perpetuated by the Marxist left, then I support your right to sacrifice your child on the altar of this deranged ideology, as I believe the end result of presenting your child as a scapegoat will only serve to inform others of the dangers that may ensue. In closing, I will say the following. I wish those involved in the Pride movement could feel more shame. Shame is a feeling that informs us of foolish or indeed immoral behaviour. I would suggest that any movement made up of supremely proud people seeking to liberalise sex, control thought, speech and justice, and indeed warp the minds of children, is a movement that will keep pushing boundaries into the realm of pure depravity. Make no mistake, Those involved in this movement are, in my opinion, engaged in the hypersexualization of children. They are engaged in the degradation and normalization of sex, including kink and the sadomasochistic. This movement relies upon your fearful tolerance through bullying and emotional blackmail, as words like homophobe and transphobe are readily applied to those who pose a threat. And as stated, they are now seeking to control your thoughts through hate speech laws and your behaviours through hate crime legislation in an effort to protect the ground they have gained and indeed continue their steady march towards hell. And these are the questions. Will you submit to laws that are unquestionably tyrannical and relinquish your rights to the bullies in support of pride? Or will you submit to being labelled with a phobia so this ideology can claim for itself the innocence, if not the lives, of your children? Make no mistake, this is the future we are being presented with.